Hello and welcome to this video for the White Collar and Organized Crime class. This is a feedback video for the discussion post and learning summary of week 1, but it is the first video that you will watch in week 2. I wanted to point out some things about white collar crime and why we tend to handle it in the civil courts rather than in the criminal courts. As we go through this idea of white collar crime for the first half of the 8-week course, and as you read the Edwin Sutherland book, you will begin to realize that some of what we call crimes are not crimes in the legal sense. They are civil law violations, which is different than a crime. For that reason, some things have to be handled in the civil courts, which is kind of an imperfect way of dealing with things, which we'll get to here in just a second. Things that are specifically criminal are dealt with in the criminal courts. For instance, there is a meme with Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart for this unit that you will see at the very top of the page for this unit. Martha Stewart was convicted of insider trading, which is a form of securities fraud. That is a very individual thing that is a crime with criminal penalties. So she was in the federal prison camp here in West Virginia. That means that she was in a very low security situation when she was incarcerated. She did her time without complaining, and she's never complained since she's gotten out. So that's one form of white collar crime that is actually a crime. So we know what the person did. We can cite a specific statute. We can get evidence against that particular individual. Now, the burden of proof in a criminal trial is beyond a reasonable doubt. Please do not say beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's not beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, beyond a reasonable doubt means that this is the only kind of doubt that a reasonable person would always have, no matter what their conclusion is. So I know my name is Jeff, but I have an unreasonable doubt sometimes that maybe it's not. Now, I'm joking about that, but that's the point. So when we say beyond a reasonable doubt, we mean that if you do doubt it, it's an unreasonable one. Okay, so if your mother served on a jury for you and she said, well, I have doubt that my son committed this crime because I know my son. Sorry, that's an unreasonable doubt. But in criminal cases, and here's where I'm going to answer some issues that were brought up in the learning summaries. Folks asked, why is the burden of proof different in civil cases than it is in criminal cases? In criminal cases, we're dealing with individuals where in an adversarial system, where the state goes on the offensive against the defendant. So the state is the offense, the accused is the defense in a competition, an adversarial court process. That's the criminal court. In civil cases, it is more common with white collar crimes that the government brings the case, but more often than not, the government is being the mediator between two other parties that are in the adversarial system against each other. So rather than the government trying to prove that you've done a criminal deed, the government is sitting as a third-party mediator to determine which side is more likely in the right. So that's why we have a different burden of proof. In a civil trial, depending on the state, it's either just a hair's, I mean, literally a feather's more likelihood of one side than the other, or a preponderance of the evidence, meaning, yes, there's still some reasonable doubts, but the total body of evidence on this sure points to this being the case. So that's the biggest difference. In most civil trials, the government is the mediator between two other parties that are adversarial against each other, whereas in criminal trials, the government is on the offensive against the defendant in the adversarial process. So the government is one of the adversaries in criminal trials, and it is not in the civil trials. In general, it can be in civil trials, but not always. So I hope that helps you discern why there are differences, and we'll see you next video.